It's a listener question time.
Woo!
So we have 2 from Queer Weirdo Human Being.
Okay.
The first question is, what is the most impressive book that you've ever read? So, Tara, I'm going to throw this one to you first.
Okay. I feel like this is hard because I've read a lot of books in my lifetime. So I am not going to try to dig back too far. I am not going to go with like a lot of deep soul searching. I am going to actually go with 2 that I'm highly confident about and that I have done a lot of talking about and will continue to for years to come. The first is actually the Subtweet by Vivek Shraya, which was my official recommendation, I think, in episode 3.
Was it that long ago? Because I read it with you.
I know.
Wow, that's really
time, Kris. It's going so fast.
It is.
No, I think it was though, because I think it was pretty early in the life of this Sweet Baby podcast that I brought it up as the best book that I read last year, and it's just one of the best books that I read in the last decade. I'm not going to get too much into it now because you can always go back to that episode if you want to hear all the things that I loved about it. But just the real short reason is that it's crisp, it's brilliant. It's very like all the things it interrogates about like friendship and social media and brown women creating content. It's so good. I can't recommend it enough. But because I refuse to be constrained, I did not choose only one book. The other one is actually Backcast by Ann McMan, which would be an official recommendation and probably should be, and maybe will be at some point if I reread it, but I haven't read it in like 4 years or something like that. So I feel like I would need to go back and reread it. But this was the book that turned me into a true Ann McMan fangirl. And anybody who listened to me on my old podcast, Let's Do Books, would know that I love Ann McMan. That I brought her up basically every chance that I had. She is hilarious, but she's also brilliant. And I interviewed her a couple of times for the podcast. And that last one was really, it was a fantastic conversation because we talked a lot about like faith and writing and I don't know, just kind of all kinds of things. And I can find that link and add that to the show notes for anybody who wants to catch up with that. But I had read Jericho and I enjoyed it just as much as anybody else. I think Jericho is one of those books that if you're a lesfic fan, many people have read it and loved it. It's kind of one of those like, along with like All That Matters by Susan X. Maher, and I'm picturing a cover. Okay. And Playing the Role of Herself by K.E. Lane. Like there's just kind of that group of like, you bring it up and everybody just starts going, oh my God, I love that book so much. Yeah. It's like, yeah, of course you do. It's a great book and the characters are great and the banter is awesome and all that. But the book that did it for me was Backcast. So the premise of Backcast is that there is a woman who gets a massive arts grant. And I forget the name of like whoever does like the largest arts funding in the United States, whatever that granting organization is. If it was Canadian, I could tell you what it was, but it's not. So I can't. But to do this big project. And so what she does is she brings all these women together, and there ends up being 13 of them total, herself included, out to this lodge in Vermont. And each woman is going to write a personal essay. And then she is a sculptor. And so she's going to create a sculpture, like some kind of a metalwork sculpture to go with each of the essays. And where it gets so brilliant is that it shifts back and forth. So each chapter has one of the essays. And so there's a different voice for each of these essays. And you don't know who wrote them. And then it dives into the goings on at this Vermont lodge, which is hilarious. And so some of these essays are quite dark and includes like child sexual abuse and getting your period for the first time. And there's like one about a nun and like, so yeah, some of them can be dark. I personally didn't find them too dark. I mean, I think that's going to be one of those, like, your mileage may vary. I never experienced child sexual assault. And so I don't know that that's, and it doesn't go like into depth or detail or anything like that, but like, it's a very real thing. But like, whatever is kind of the theme, or whether it's the theme or there's something to do with the essay, something about that shows up in their actual what they're doing at the lodge. And it's like the goings on at the lodge are also often hilarious. And so it does a really good job of balancing, like, you might feel like it's kind of heavy reading an essay, but then like you're laughing your ass off at one of the jokes later on. And so it does a really good job of balancing all of that. And then there's this like magical fish that talks to one of them, because there's also a fishing contest. I don't know. That's probably the part that I connected the least with, but the rest of it, I just thought, like, how brilliant to infuse all these voices in and to be wondering the whole time, because you're seeing, you're like, okay, whose story was that one about the nun? Which one of these women used to be a nun? Like, what's that? And then you kind of, when you find out at the end, basically, like, there's a, you do end up there within the text, there's a way that you're told who did each one, but it's just so brilliant because it really delves into that idea of what parts of our story do we reveal and which do we conceal, and we get to choose that, and who we do it with and in which contexts. We're just going to pretend that that was an official recommendation, because if you haven't read, I'm not going to be able to say it better in the future, even if I do reread it. If you haven't read it, you absolutely must, like, go out, get this book. It's fabulous in audio as well. Christine Williams narrates it, who I love her. Her voice with all of Ann McMan's books are fantastic. Or if you are inclined to buy from the publisher, please do go to the Bywater Books site, because when you can buy, especially in Lesfic with our small presses, like Bywater, Bold Strokes, Ilva, Bella, more money goes to the authors and more money stays with the publishers. So, I mean, I absolutely respect, if you're a Kindle person like me, you're probably still going to get it from Amazon. That's just how that goes. But if you're not necessarily a Kindle person, then that's, please do go get it from their site.